Well, I just want to say that I'm honored to be here. The InfoSec Foundation came from Boston, Massachusetts, and I got to tell you, if you guys had just told me that you had those round things for dessert, God, I would have been here long before. That was just amazing. What are those things called? Oh, I got to find that when I get back to Boston. Absolutely, absolutely amazing. So what we're talking about today is blockchain and security vulnerabilities. God, I mean, who talks about this? Everybody's been talking about how great blockchain is. Well, I come from the security side and I'm a lawyer, so I kind of look at some things and go, geez, is there anything I got to worry about? Who has read a book that starts with the conclusion? Oh my God, it's 3 pages. The dude I thought was going to be like the main guy in the book's dead. Well, tell you what, I'm sorry, I'm going to do the same thing to you. I'm going to give you the conclusion first. All the stuff that you've been watching about malware, phishing, DDoS, all these traditional things, same things we've been fighting forever. Same issue with blockchain. Now, blockchain itself, you kind of look at it as this really secure fortress in itself. The problem is it's full of knuckleheads all around it. And those are people like you and me that may click on a bad link, they get phished, all the traditional vulnerabilities. So what we're going to do today, real quick, I'm going to make sure I stay on time, is one, go through some terminology. I want to go through a couple of things because I want to make sure that when you guys go to a dinner party, you know what all these things mean and you're going to look wicked smart. Okay. Now, I was actually told by my new friend from Cisco that this is an incredibly intelligent crowd. I don't have to get into public key infrastructure, any stuff like that. You guys are incredibly, incredibly smart. So I'm going to go over this really quickly. So what is blockchain? It's a distributed ledger. What the hell is a ledger? Think about an Excel spreadsheet. But wait a second. What makes this blockchain thing interesting? Well, think of each line of that spreadsheet possibly being a separate block that's been able to be held together. Why do we care? Sure, well, blockchain is a great fundamental technology. But what are the people that have been making, who's making money? At the moment, it's the coins, right? And we all know the coins. We know, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, and the hundreds and hundreds of other coins out there. How do you tie these blocks together? Hashing. Hashing is putting information through an algorithm and getting a encrypted output. What does an encrypted output matter? It matters because you have something that can be compared against putting that same information through the same algorithm. If they don't match, then the change has been made. What does this have to do with blockchain? Because there's a hash that gets formed through the entire blockchain every time you add a block. So it's not just 1 and 1 hash equals. It's, let's say, how long is it now? Let's say you have 200 different blocks. Hash all of them and then add a new on. And you get stronger as it goes. You are continually hashing the entire blockchain. And that's what makes it so strong. What are nodes? Again, the reason I want to go over this is because when I start talking about vulnerabilities, if I say a word, all right, trust me, I'm the guy that comes from IBM. Everything's a 3-letter acronym at IBM. So, I hate using words or acronyms that people aren't familiar with. So nodes. It really could be anything on the blockchain network. Most of them will contain an entire copy of the blockchain, which is why it's called a distributed ledger. The ledger, it's distributed through all the different nodes. Some may be processing transactions, some may not. Processing transactions, how could that happen? How does that happen? Why does something say, we trust that? We trust that we're going to add a new block. And that's what's actually done through mining. So some of the nodes are going to be miners. What in the heck is mining? Mining is performing a difficult computational formula to come to a result. And the first one that gets it wins. Now that is what's created the arms race in the computing power and use of electricity. Because if you win, you get some coin. So it's become increasingly difficult. People have come to the point, you guys all know, yeah, hey, let's set up shop in China right next to a waterfall so I can have hydroelectric power and process this and get my own Bitcoin. Proof of work versus proof of stake consensus. Bitcoin is a proof of work. All that computational power is going on to get to a result. There are some people that aren't crazy about that because this is going to increase and increase as the block gets larger and larger. Proof of stake is a little bit different. It actually has to do with people that have, instead of their computing, they've invested. So this is not the way that Bitcoin works, but it could be maybe somebody has invested a certain amount. If they screw up, they lose their investment. So just kind of a couple different ways of mining going on. PKI, this is the way. Do you guys, public key infrastructure, you know there's some public and private keys, how they work together? I bet you all do. But the importance here is that you don't have to be you on the blockchain. You can be your private key. That's what makes it anonymous. That's what makes money laundering possible, is because you don't have to use your identity. You can use a key. What's a wallet? A wallet is if I actually had an app on here where I could store my private key and also keep track of what cyber currencies I owned. What's a hot wallet versus a cold wallet? This is going to be really key because hot wallets are ones that are connected to the internet, and if you're connected to the internet, you can be accessed. Cold wallets have an air gap. It could be that you have installed, instead of installing this on my wallet, my app, on my iPhone, what if I had installed it on that lousy ancient MacBook Air that I don't use for anything else, and I actually turned off all Wi-Fi capabilities? I could actually generate private keys on that and then take it over to another wallet. I could keep it on a USB drive. I could write it down on paper. Yeah, cold storage. That's knowing what your keys are, but not having it anywhere that somebody could find it on your computer. You know, that file that you have that, labeled passwords that you keep on Google Drive? Right. That one that is the first thing that the hackers want to go to figure out what all your keys are. Exactly. You don't do that. So what you do is you make sure you got the air gap, and that makes it cold. What is a seed phrase? Are we having fun yet? Look at all the new stuff you're learning today. So a seed phrase is because people are not going to remember an 81-character private key. What are you going to use? You actually can use a seed generator, and seed generators are often associated with a wallet, to make it something that we can actually possibly have a chance of remembering. Often it's a 12, 24, or 36 word. I won't even call it a phrase because each of the words are completely unrelated. And if you can keep this seed phrase, you can put it, like let's say everything is blown up, your phone, you dropped it, it got run over by a truck. How do I get this stuff back? You could download the app, put that phrase back in, and still recover your private key. The only problem is, where do you put the seed phrase? Should we put it back on that Google Drive labeled password? Well, a lot of people think that's a bad idea. So literally, I gotta tell you, what a lot of people do is they write it down someplace and they keep it. Now, of course, your house can burn down, or maybe your handwriting is as bad as mine. Literally, some people have it engraved on a piece of metal just to make sure that that sort of destruction doesn't happen. And that really allows it to be far more secure. Deterministic wallets. Okay, this is the last slide on this, I swear. But this one to me is really cool. So we already figured out that wallet thing. The tricky part is if you're always using the same private key, people can actually get some sort of view of your activity. It's much more likely they're going to tie it back to an individual. So a deterministic wallet, and I think this is pretty cool, will create new private keys for each transaction. If you're shooting for anonymity, that is definitely the way to go. And exchanges. So how do you get those Bitcoin in the first place? You had to go to some place where you'd give them rupees and they'd give you Bitcoin. That's an exchange. All right. By the way, that's where a lot of the money is. All right. So let's move on and talk, why do people rob banks? Because that's where the money is, right? So what's the best way to rob the Bitcoin bank? Well, we really have four places. You could go after the blockchain itself. You could go after an exchange. You could go after miners or mining, or you could go after consumers. Hey, put on your black hat. Which one do you want to go after? Which one do you want to go after? Miner's an idea. Let's take a look at if that is where the bad guys are going. So, the blockchain itself. What are the downsides? There are insecure implementations. Not everybody does it perfectly well on their own install. Maybe they don't use somebody that's already set something up, like IBM. There are some common vulnerabilities that have been documented. Yeah, we all know about people that don't do patches, or maybe they do the install of a version that had a more recent version that they should have put on. Some people decide that they are smarter than the people that wrote DES, AES, Bluefish, whatever. Yeah, they want to use some other algorithm. Not generally a great idea. Somebody created an instance where people got credit for mining even though they weren't mining, which kind of defeats the purpose because then you're emptying your bank for somebody that did absolutely nothing. So that's going after the blockchain itself. You can go after exchanges. Wow, these are some good numbers. Wow, geez. $532 million when a bunch of keys to wallets were stolen? I hate when that happened. Hot wallets. Oh, I'm so glad we went over these terms. You'll notice that hot wallets are really where the action is. Oh my, right? It's the stuff that's connected to the internet. DDoS attacks. You can always do the same sort of stuff where you DDoS somebody to bits and they fall over and they go out of business. But that's much better to ask for ransom. I don't know. Mt. Gox, probably, even though it wasn't the biggest number, probably one of the best known of the exchanges to fall over. These guys were smart. That's the way we say it in Boston. It's a little weird. Sorry about that. Basically, they spent years siphoning off money. They were doing this. They didn't get greedy. My father always said that pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. Meaning, don't get too greedy. These guys were so successful because they weren't that greedy. And Ubit out of business before hot wallets got into. It seems like a recurring theme. This is how exchanges get hit. And how did these things happen? They get into hot wallets usually because they took over somebody's machine. Like some sort of insider gets compromised that would have had access to these wallets. And it's all the same stuff that we lose. It doesn't have to be Bitcoin. It's the same sort of stuff that we lose, whether it's intellectual property, it's whether it is money in a bank or whatever. We just have some new fancy technology that robbers can now go rob with the same old tools. Miners and mining. Somebody referred to this earlier today, cryptojacking. That is when you get somebody else's computer to be a miner. The only problem is it's going to make it go dead slow if you put too much pressure on it. Oh, I love the double dipping of ransomware and cryptojacking. That's where you go ahead and say that you've encrypted their hard drive, but while they're freaking out and trying to figure out how to pay you, you turn them into a crypto miner. God, these guys are heartless. Then there's the people that actually get in between the ransomware people. They siphon off the money that was meant to go to pay for the ransomware, so the person, one, loses their money, and then at the same time never gets their hard drive decrypted. It's a tough world out there, folks. And then there's a thing called a majority attack. You're not really going to run into this in Bitcoin, but in smaller coins you may. Basically, if you control the mining network, you can add on blocks. And wouldn't you like to add on blocks that said that you got a big deposit that you didn't deserve? So that's called a majority attack, and that's how you go after miners and mining. And then there's consumers. Oh, those poor consumers. Let's see. Yep, somebody got sniffed. Somebody just put on a tap to look at passwords. Typical sort of stuff. Or you can just download dry docs. You know, this is technology just for stealing wallets. I love the injection of fake login pages. Maybe you do a fake exchange. People get really, really good with that. The down into the Enigma thing. Those guys went all out. Newsletters, websites, Slack channels. Basically, they just looked like somebody else and said, "Log in here." We've all seen it before, but now it's just being used for a different target. Password attacks. If you know dictionary attacks, you know that this is where we talk about stupid people again using bad passwords. We all, we've all. Do you teach your families? Obviously, you're the smart kids in the families on the cybersecurity stuff. Do you make sure that they know about using unique passwords for every account? You know, setting up phrases that may be modified based on the account that they're setting up. I'm sure all you guys do that. Other people don't. And it really comes back to bite the people that use things like password or password1. Why? Because even when you hash those things, they'll often come out as a recognizable thing. And that's called, that's the rainbow table. That's where you can actually look at what things look like hashed, and if it's small enough, you might be able to figure out actually what it is. God, I don't know. I need to finish on brain wallets because I think that is my favorite. The phishing, that was the IOLTA seed. That was basically somebody that said, remember the seed the seed generators take big long character thing, turn it down to 12 words. Well, they put up something like that, and of course people had to input their private key to generate something, and yeah, too bad they were doing it onto a phishing site. But let me get back to brain wallets. Brain wallets are one of my favorite. So you are so smart. You don't even need to write this stuff down. You're so smart. So a brain wallet has a couple of vulnerabilities. One, you get hit by a bus. Two, you forget what it is. These are all common vulnerabilities of a brain wallet. I don't know. I think I'm going back to the metal thing. So the long and the short is we're going to end where we started. If you've seen how these things get attacked. It's all through the very traditional ways that people have always been going after what they want, which is money. So I really appreciate it. What I'm going to do now is see if I can get seconds on that dessert, because I'm definitely not leaving this country without getting more of that. So thank you very much.